Working in her active role as a therapist, she also spends time serving as an active board member on local nonprofit agencies. And she commits to being a public speaker to small groups at community events, Jacksonville State University, local elementary schools and high schools, and anywhere she feels that her message can be utilized to help others. I like her TikTok videos. So, Contina's educational background is a BS in social work, an MS in community agency counseling, and she is currently licensed as an LPCS. Her career background ranges from working as a social worker at DHR, a counselor at youth villages, private practice counseling, counselor and administrator of Bradford Health Services, to several volunteer work hours, counseling and providing services to children and families. Contina's favorite role is that of a wife and mother, and she enjoys spending time with her family and friends. And you will best find her in her free time, she used air quotes, free time, working out, running, gross, but I still love her, enjoying a hot cup of coffee or a nice glass of wine, and any kind of activity that involves helping others to see life in a more positive light. Welcome, Contina. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. And you know what? As you were reading that, I was thinking I really need to update that because running and working out is not one of my favorite activities anymore. It's not as much as it used to be.
1,000,000 degrees outside. Like,
I actually really like this time of the year, and people are disgusted by it. I just did that on a Facebook post saying, you know, this is my time of the year. I like it when it's hot, but this is, you know, I realize for some people miserable hot, but I cannot stand the cold. I want to live somewhere where it's 65 and up year round. I don't ever want to, I don't care anything about fall or winter time. Yeah. This is my time of the year.
Well, I appreciate that immensely because I am what's considered an indoorsy person. So yeah. I'm just, there are bears outside and there's no air conditioning. I'm good. So. But I'm going to step back so you can take it over, okay?
Thank you, guys. I was listening in at the previous speaker, who was wonderful, Andrea, and I thought, well, I am that Pollyanna person. Like, they're going to hate me in just a little bit because I am probably one of those people. Now, I don't do disingenuous, you know, fill your cup up in a way that, you know, obviously. That person is not ready to hear that, but I do err on the side of change your thoughts, change your life. And so sometimes it probably does seem a bit Pollyanna when I go into talking about self-care. Now, this presentation that I'm going to do today is mostly PowerPoint. I was telling Trace, I have the worst hour of the day. It's usually when everybody's sleepy and ready to head on out. But also it's on PowerPoint because I usually do it in person. And so, you know, it's a little bit different. So I'll try to come in and out of the PowerPoint. But if you guys have questions, please ask those questions. And I hope that it works. I've never done this as a Zoom presentation. So I hope that it does work. Like Trey said in the introduction, I'm a therapist here at Serenity Counseling. I've been doing private practice counseling on and off again since about 2006, but most presently here for the last 3 years. And I know how difficult it is sometimes to carry the weight of everyone else's problems and issues and concerns and trauma and still, you know, come out on the other end of it, taking care of yourself and making sure that you're not owning everybody's things and then projecting that or vomiting that out onto other people, mainly your family. So I'm just going to get started with the PowerPoint and then probably come in and out of it. And you guys just let me know if you have questions. I'll try to pay attention to that. I'm going to share my screen. If I can find the actual. I hope you guys can see that. And so we'll go from here. So the name of this obviously is Coping and Self-Care. And I wanted to begin by talking about coping with listening to trauma all day. So there's a such thing as vicarious living that we all know about, and that's when we have an experience through the lens of another person, and that can happen in so many positive ways. Like if we're following someone on social media, and we imagine those adventures to be our own. My husband and I, yeah, like to travel a lot, and we recently went to Belize, and then for my birthday we went to Barcelona, and I had so many people say, keep posting pictures because I'm living vicariously through you. And that's a positive experience. Or you have a family member who experiences success and you picture yourself in their shoes. Or, I hear my clients jokingly say, like, I watch my married clients, I watch my single friends in this dating world, dating multiple people. And sometimes I live vicariously through them and laugh about their dating experiences when they're good ones. And obviously, those are all positive vicarious experiences, but there are also experiences that cause vicarious trauma. This is the phenomenon that when you feel negatively affected by a tragic situation, even if you weren't physically there for it. Vicarious trauma can materialize in many different ways and can also range in intensity. But it's our natural response to human suffering. Some of us have it more so than others. They call that level of intensity or that person an empath. And so sometimes hearing these stories over and over again have a way of affecting you indirectly with the trauma. I have a difficult time, not sure about some of you here, but I have a difficult time watching certain movies or certain shows. So if someone tells me on the front end, yeah, it'll stay with you for a while, or it's really, really heavy, I have to decide whether or not I'm going to sign up for watching that show or that movie. There are certain shows that stay with me way too long, and those aren't even real life experiences, they're television shows. I remember after watching The Green Mile, I could not disconnect from the movie for such a long time. There are certain movies that affect me that way. If any of you are This Is Us fans, I cry every single episode of This Is Us. Sometimes I'm not ready to sign up for the level of emotion that it requires to watch an episode of This Is Us. So there are also some professions that are just genuinely more likely to experience vicarious trauma. And so as advocates ourselves, or as therapists or social workers, you can probably guess that we are in that group. But in order to be truly empathetic, we must share in the pain that our clients feel to some degree. If we're feeling what they're feeling, not all of it, then we are able to have empathy and probably affect them in a different way than if we did not feel that. So this requires also a great deal of vulnerability from us. I wanted to share this Brene Brown video. I'm not sure if it will show or not, or if it will play or not, but I hope that it will, about empathy. I'm hoping that it will play. And if not, we'll go on to the next. I guess not today. I will provide some links to some of the videos here that are in this presentation and be happy to share those after this is over. If you've never seen the video, Brene Brown is one of my favorites, and she talks about empathy in the video, and she says in order to truly have an experience of empathy with someone, we have to get on their level, not from above them, saying, oh yeah, this must be pretty bad, or yeah, that's pretty bad for you, or yeah, that sucks. That we actually get down on the level with them that says this must really be, hard for you, or I know that this is hard for you. I may not experience it the way you do, but I believe it as you experience it, not as I experience it, not as I wish you to experience it. At the end of that video, she says, we do this thing where we at least people, where we say, well, someone says, my daughter's having a hard time in school, and you say, well, at least your son's an A student, or I have just had a miscarriage. Well, at least you have 3 other children. And so with this degree of at leasting people, it lacks empathy. We don't experience it as they're experiencing it. We experience it as we wish that they would experience it. So with this degree of empathy that it requires for us as advocates, there's a cost to it. And helping professionals often don't feel affected by these experiences right away. It takes a little bit of time, but we're human beings. So over time, what happens is the wearing down of hearing these stories over and over again. And this is where the vicarious trauma comes in. Says it's important to know that vicarious trauma is not an immediate response, but it's cumulative and can be an ongoing process from hearing and caring for those who've experienced these events. And this is where I also introduced the topic of self-care. I'm going to try again to play a video, and we'll see if it works. And if not, we'll skip on through.
Hey, Contina, there doesn't seem to be a volume on the video. Can we maybe turn it up?
It's not playing. Okay, hold on. Let me try again. Someone just gave me directions on sharing the sound. To share the sound on video, that I have to unshare my screen and then reshare. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's
You'll
try
have to
this
share
again.
the sound.
Oh goodness.
Click the 2 boxes to share the screen. But I am, yeah, and Jeremy is saying when you share your screen. Oops.
Let's see if this did it.
Okay. And I'm adding these links for you.
Man, I'm so glad
Did you guys hear that?
I could.
we decided to get
Okay.
mani-pedis during our lunch hour.
Right? Practicing self-care is so important. I mean, sometimes I feel guilty about it, but I just am so much more productive if I take a little bit of time to do things that make me feel better.
Yeah, totally.
Just anything that'll get you through the day, you know?
Goddesses,
Mm.
last night I was going to call my parents, but instead I watched 3 episodes of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Is that bad?
No, that's just self-care. I mean, you just sometimes have to take a little bit of time to recharge yourself, you know?
Right?
Angels, I have a confession.
Oh, I love confessions.
Yesterday for lunch I was going to have a salad,
Oh, I love salad.
but I ate 13 glazed donuts instead.
Yum!
Was that naughty?
Did that make your soul feel better?
You know, it did.
Well, everybody knows that soul health is so much more important than body health. Like, that is self-care 101.
Okay, phew.
You know, a thing that I've really been into recently is that I cut my work hours down from 40 hours a week to like 0. Does that make me an awful person?
No! That is so self-caring.
It's not lazy if you need it.
I need it. And I feel so much better now. And I just like basically get the same amount of work done.
Did I tell you guys that Tom and I have moved our relationship into an open status?
Shut up, stupid. Really?
Well, I'm sleeping with other people, and I was going to tell him, but confrontation makes me feel feelings, and that's like the opposite of self-care. Does that make me wet human garbage?
You cannot tell him, and you cannot stop. I mean, think about how terribly it would affect your equilibrium.
He's happier when you're happier.
Yeah,
That's what relationships are all about.
that's what Oprah's always saying.
I love okra.
My women. I think I'm just gonna not pay my taxes this year. Should I just go jump in a haunted lake? Because I'm so morally bankrupt.
Oh no, that's a great idea.
I mean, on the one hand, it's illegal, but on the other hand, think of all the amazing self-care I'll be able to do with that extra $5,000.
Oh, totally. It's the same reason I robbed that convenience store. Like, okay, fine, I could have bought stuff, but shooting up the place, really filled me with a childhood joy that's so important to chase as an adult.
Oh, Katie,
Oh no, is that wrong, babies?
That is so self-caring. Anyway, if that was wrong, all three of us would be in jail for enslaving everybody in the office.
these are organic.
All right. I didn't mean to cut the whole thing off, but that obviously is not an idea of self-care. I thought that was hilarious the first time I watched it, because I do think that we've gotten to a place where everything is considered self-care. Everything that we do is considered self-care. And so, self-care has to be an intentional activity, but this video, I believe, took it way to the extreme. I'm going to continue to share this part of the screen. 1 second. I don't know if my screen actually is still sharing anymore now that I turned the video off. I'm horrible with this.
You are doing great.
Let's see.
You're doing just fine.
Okay, here we go. So we're back to what really is self-care. Self-care is any intentional activity that helps us take care of our mental health, our emotional health, or our physical health. And so what happens when we don't do that, obviously, is burnout. We're probably all here familiar with burnout. I've worked in several different areas as far as being a social worker and a counselor. I started out my career at DHR and then worked for youth villages and Bradford Health Services. And so I feel like I've experienced a wide variety of different demographics and spaces as far as working with people. And burnout has occurred in each one of those areas when I'm not careful. When I don't take care of myself mentally, emotionally, or physically, I have experienced burnout. So is burnout an endpoint or a process? If it's an endpoint, then that means we're at risk for that outcome while having a limited ability to be able to do anything about it. But if it's a process, then we actually can take control over burnout. I like this little graph here that says burnout and self-care. I actually got it off of a website that was talking about teachers and their experience of burnout throughout the school year. But I felt like this graph actually depicts like any of our work life, not just if we're teachers, but if we're therapists. And as I looked at it, this graph goes between August and July, but I felt like I experienced this sometimes in one day. In the website, it talked about how teachers anticipate their students coming at the beginning of the school year. And somewhere right before Christmas holiday, they're in survival mode. They've already experienced the newness of the students. They know which students are probably going to be the ones that, cause them the most difficulty. They know what their expectations are from their, from staff or from upper staff. And so they're in survival mode, and then they go into somewhat of a disillusionment right before Christmas break. Like, what am I doing? Why did I become a teacher? And then somewhere after Christmas break, going into maybe spring break, they experience some rejuvenation. They know we don't have that much longer. The school year is almost over. And then right there at the end of the school year is reflection, because children have made so much progress. They're doing much better. They're getting ready to move on to the next level. You to experience that joy and the parent joy, and then you go back into anticipation. Well, like I said, when I first saw it, I thought this is me probably on a regular basis, because at the beginning of my day, I'm in anticipation of seeing the clients that I have scheduled for the day. Now, if it's a long day, like Monday is my long day. I know that I'm going to see 7 or 8 clients on a Monday, and I'm in anticipation. I can't wait to hear their stories and sharing their journey. But around about, I don't know, lunchtime, and I'm in survival mode, especially if I didn't pack well for lunch, or if I'm going to have to run out and get lunch and hurry back. And then maybe around about 2 or 3 o'clock, I'm in disillusionment. Like, why in the world did I put so many people on my schedule today? This is impossible. And then maybe around 4 or 5 o'clock, rejuvenation. I love this. This is what I was made to do. Reflection towards the end of the day, because I know my day is ending as well. And then anticipation of the next day at the end of the day, or anticipation of maybe getting home to rest for the next day. And so this is sort of what burnout and self-care looks like, except when you do this on a repetitive basis, you have the tendency to burn out. So we sometimes say we're burned out, but this term is static. It suggests immobility. The best term may be burning out. I like this little colorful graph here that says work-related causes of burnout. When I first read it, I thought, well, I share this with people all the time, and they can raise their hand to almost every one of these. Feeling like you have little or no control over your work, lack of recognition or reward for good work, unclear or overly demanding job expectations, doing work that's monotonous or challenging, or working in an unorganized or high pressure environment. That last one in the red, most of us, if we work for an agency or organization, we probably have experienced either the high pressure environment or how unorganized it is to work in some spaces. The next area is also lifestyle causes of burnout. Working too much without enough time for relaxing or socializing. Being expected to be too many things to too many people. Taking on too many responsibilities without enough help. Not getting enough sleep. Lack of close supportive relationships. But these things are lifestyles, which mean they're your choice. They're based on how many times you say yes to things that you probably should say no to. There's even a second side that says personality traits that could contribute to burnout. Perfectionist tendencies, pessimistic view of yourself and the world, the need to be in control, or high achieving. A lot of times when I'm working with my clients here in private practice, one of the first interventions or homework assignments that they receive from me is a personality assessment. I typically use the Enneagram. We also do a lot of work with the Demartini values assessment, because I learn a lot about a person when I know about their personality traits or their personality style. I also teach them a lot about why they lean on this side of burning out or being overwhelmed or overly anxious because of their personality traits. So if any of you are also familiar with or have never taken the Demartini values assessment or the Enneagram assessment, I'll be happy to send you the link to both of those. I learned a lot about myself when I took the Enneagram assessment. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, if any of you are familiar with it. And my husband is a 9. 7s are spontaneous and unorganized, and we love to party, have parties and travel. And our deepest fear is pain. We don't want other people to feel pain. We don't want to feel pain. And it's interesting to know that about myself, and also, give myself grace for spaces where I probably have been incredibly critical of that, but it's a part of my personality traits. It doesn't mean that all of them are healthy. It just means that I learned a lot by doing the Enneagram. My husband's a 9 on the Enneagram. Learned a lot about him as well, because 9s are, they avoid conflict at all costs. They are peacemakers. And so where I would think, we're having a difficult conversation, and I look up and he's outside cutting grass. And I would think, oh my goodness, he's abandoned me, or, he doesn't want to talk about this, but this is the way his personality works. This is how he resolves things. He doesn't like conflict. He wants to get quickly back to good. So he'll go outside and cut grass, or he'll, maybe go and ride his bike. And when you know a lot about your personality and another person's personality, you tend to have less reason to have conflict or argument, if that makes any sense. The same as with the Demartini values assessment. There's 7 different values on that assessment. And while I believed my value system would be set up as maybe family, spiritual, career, of those being my top 3, after taking the assessment, it was money, career, and then family. My husband took the assessment and his was family. I think career was somewhere very low. Money was very low on his, but family, I remember being very high, money being very high on mine. And a lot of our values are derived from lack. And I grew up poor. He grew up without a father. So it doesn't surprise me when he loves to be surrounded by all the kids and everybody at the house, as far as family. And I'm somewhat overwhelmed maybe by all of the noise of the whole family being there. And I knew this to be true when he did take up the habit of bike riding some years ago. And he purchased a very expensive bike with his own money, but he purchased a very expensive bike. And I thought, what in the world are you doing? And money is not of a high value to him. While I was going crazy thinking, why in the world would you spend this amount of money on purchasing a bike? But the bike brings him so much joy. And so it's very interesting to learn. I kind of got off there, but learn about personality traits, and how that they contribute to how we respond to things at work, how we respond to people in our life. And so it's a very, very interesting way to begin a relationship, a therapeutic relationship, but it also helps in our own personal relationships. So the next part is just the history of burnout. I won't bore you by reading this entire thing, but the literature on burnout has spanned nearly 40 years. There's information here. I would be happy to send copies of this PowerPoint. Information here about, the social worker's professional self-care policy says that burnout is a syndrome of emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced personal accomplishment that can occur among individuals who do people work of some kind. And that's what we do, people work. So self-care is not new. We've been talking about self-care for a long time, maybe just giving it the term self-care. But self-care is not new. So when I'm going to maybe get to the next, I am going to read this part. When self-care practices are examined, understood, and put into practice, we as helping professionals see that they all, no matter what form they come in, essentially give us the same outcomes. We become rejuvenated, energized, inspired, healed, restored, and happier. In so doing, we become increasingly capable to continue to serve others, to give to others, to engage in giving and receiving in a manner and to the degree that honors our profession and the role of professional helper. I'm going to go on to the next. I want to see if this video will play. It's why self-care is so important. Now, this does say something about filling up a cup. And I don't want anybody to get disgusted or run out of the meeting, but there is something about filling up a cup here. But I still thought that this was a funny clip that Oprah shared. I wanted to make sure that the sound was okay. We're there.
The truth is, you don't have anything to give that you don't have. So you have to keep your own self full. That's your job. One of my daughters is here today from Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy. Stand up today so everybody can see you. You're going to end your first year soon. Oh my God, it's first year. I say to my girls all of the time that your real work is to figure out where your power base is and to work on the alignment of your personality, your gifts that you have to give, with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and to fill yourself up and keep your cup full. Keep yourself full. Now, I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid, particularly from people who say, oh, she's so full of herself. She's so full of herself. And now I embrace it. I consider it a compliment that I am full of myself. Because you only when you're full, I'm full, I'm overflowing. My cup runneth over. I have so much to offer and so much to give. And I am not afraid of honoring myself. You know, it's miraculous when you think about it. First of all, for me, my father and mother never married. They had sex one time underneath an oak tree because she was wearing a poodle skirt in 1953. And my dad, to this day, says, I want to know what's under that skirt. That's what I want to know. He wanted to know what was under the skirt. They didn't really have a relationship. She wanted one, but, you know, he went under the skirt and then that was it. And one time under the oak tree, bam, Renaissance.
Woman is born. It happened there.
That's why I know my life is bigger than that. My life has to be bigger, as yours is, bigger than a poodle skirt. It's much bigger. The design, the reason why I'm here is much bigger than, oh, I think I want to see what's under there. So the ability to take care of that, to honor yourself and that which is greater than yourself, that which was the reason for your being here. That there's no selflessness in that, because only through that do you have the ability to offer yourself, your whole self, your full expression of who you are to the rest of the world.
I like that. I also think about words, like she was talking about selflessness, you know, in the beginning of working with my clients, or sometimes even in supervision when I'm supervising new ALCs, we talk about the word selfish or selflessness, and we learn certain words early on, and we run with those words for the rest of our life, like the word selfish. Or I think about just yesterday, I had a client, a young client who we were processing his feelings of anger. And he, you know, was just talking about, it seemed like a very small event, but he said, I don't even know if I want to share it because I don't want you to think anything about me. And I said, remember, that never happens in here. And he had basketball camp that day and had a desire to eat a snack that he left in the refrigerator, you know, and could not wait to get home to his snack. And so all day long, he said, I didn't even treat myself during the day, during basketball camp, like, because I wanted to eat my snack when I got home. And so he gets home, he wants to have a snack. His siblings come up, they want some of it too. And his mother says, don't be inconsiderate or selfish. And he said he didn't think he was being either one of those things, but he split up the snack. And he said, I didn't even want my portion once I went into my room and I was angry at everybody in the house. And I thought, we teach our children sometimes, or we carry these messages our entire life of words like considerate or selfish. And so we don't learn how to love ourselves first, or how to take care of ourselves, or we don't even know what self-care is. Even the word considerate, we spent the session using the dictionary. We looked up the definition of the word considerate and the definition of the word inconsiderate. And I said, so sometimes, by definition, the definition of considerate is to basically make sure that you don't inconvenience or hurt others. But that's such an interesting word, because if we are all of the time making sure we're not inconveniencing or hurting other people, then in our consideration to others, we are inconsiderate to self. And, you know, I don't know how you guys manage your parenting or grandparenting. I'm a different kind of grandparent than I was as a parent, but I don't force my grandchildren to share things when it's theirs. If they would like to, then that's fine. But I encourage them to express themselves. I encourage them to know what belongs to them. And if they don't want to share it, they don't have to share it. And I don't call that inconsiderate, but that's just, you know, the way that I'm raising mine a little bit different. There are certain words that limit us in our adulthood because we learned them when we were very young and they follow us throughout our adulthood, and we put ourselves last. If we are all of the time making sure everybody else is okay and we don't inconvenience anybody and we people please, and it means we're going to be selfish if we do something for ourselves and we don't, and we take care of, then we're last. We're always last. I better make sure there aren't any questions in the chat. It's wisdom for us all. I'm reading here. Just love the point that we can't just self-care ourselves. Our workplace needs to have self-care plans for employees. Yes, especially in this field. I am fortunate that I work for myself. So if I need to take off, I'm going to take off. I'm going to take those days. But absolutely, as a director or administrator, anytime I've ever been in those positions, I've made sure that employees know that family comes first, number one, and that if they need to take off, they need to take off. I don't think that that's reiterated in our workplaces. I don't think there are a lot of workplaces that have a self-care plan, maybe more now than ever before, because people are demanding it. But I don't think that that's ever been reiterated. Like I said, we've been conditioned to think that if we're not thinking about a whole, then we're selfish. If we're not thinking about team, then we're selfish. But there are times where we have to be considerate of ourselves, even if that means we're being inconsiderate. Okay. Uh-oh, sorry. What about now? So this next screen is what is a balanced life? Sorry. This wheel of balance obviously is some unrealistic balanced life. There's no way that every equal portion of this pie could be possible. I don't know anybody who could equally portion out all these places and have a balanced life. So we have to be realistic about what a balanced life is. We have to understand what your needs are, your desires are, build your life according to it. My balanced life is not going to look like anybody else's balanced life. As a matter of fact, when I've done this presentation and had like a drawing board or a blackboard or something to write on, and I draw out my balanced life, there's a huge portion, probably half of it, that is work. I'm wired that way. I enjoy work. I'm energized by work. And, and then I divvy out the other side where it's family and my time with my husband, also time with maybe working out, my spiritual time, my time with friends. But I remember in one seminar where I was teaching this, a woman in the group raised her hand and said, how can that be balanced? You must not like your family very much. And I, first of all, judgment. And then secondly, I thought your balanced life will not be my balanced life. If my balance wheel was primarily family, everybody would be miserable. Me and the kids and my husband, everybody would be miserable. We have to figure out what balance looks like for ourselves, not someone else's balance, not my mother's balance, not what your balanced life looks like. And you can start with small things. You can find out where you find your energy and where you're most energized doing these things. Now, in taking my family into consideration, there are times that I do have to look at my balance wheel and know that I may need to spend more time with my children. They need me. I may need more time with my husband. He and I have a deal. Like if I work on a Saturday, it's during morning hours because he usually rides his bike in the mornings. And so that's how we balance our life. But he's never said, hey, I don't want you working all these hours, because he knows that's my balance. That's how I take care of me. So everybody's balance is going to look different. He is always around when I'm putting together my PowerPoint presentations. And when I put this little stick man together where it says, what is a balanced life? And here are the parts of the balance where career and spirituality, health, friendship. well, the marriage, which is the arm, is on the floor. And he said, why is marriage on the floor? And I was like, it just so happened as I was writing out the word that that's the word that ended up on the arm. It's not that our marriage is going to be falling on the floor. But finding balance does include keeping expectations in line with reality. So the truth is, finding balance is an ongoing process. Like one week, balance may look different than the next week, because not even in nature, I mean, we started this whole presentation out talking about the weather, not even in nature, sometimes it's balance, not even in a whole day. If you live in the South, right there in the fall or the spring, sometimes it's freezing cold in the morning and hot in the evening, or hot in the morning and by the evening you need a sweater. So even in nature, there's not balance, and we have to find the balance. So we definitely have to do it in our own life. I like that this says nature gracefully and sometimes ungracefully transitions from one moment to the next. And we have to learn how to find a graceful way to transition into in areas of our life as well. I want to tell a quick story about expectations and reality. I attended a seminar maybe 17 years ago where this man was teaching about expectations and reality. And our emotions exist between the two. And so if they're very far away from one another, that's the degree of emotion that we'll have. If your expectations live on 7th Street and your reality lives on 2nd Street, there's going to be a lot of emotion between that. And at the time, I was dating my son's father, and we're very different in personality. We're just very different. I'm loud and kind of, he says animated, and he was not. He was the opposite, dull and boring and a still puddle. So we just are very, very different, very different. And I took my first cruise with my best friend, and I remember being so excited one day. We got lost on one of our excursions, and it's kind of frightening, but it was also exciting. And when I got back on the ship, I called him. This was back, like I said, many years ago when roaming was on phones, and I told him all about my day excitedly, telling him about my day. And his response was nothing. I thought the call had been dropped. And I said, hello. And he's like, yeah. And I said, did you not hear my story? And he said, what do you want me to say? He also had a voice like Rocky Balboa, no exaggeration. And what do you want me to say? And I said something like, are you jealous that I'm on the cruise? I mean, it was a ridiculousness. We got in an argument. My friend left me in the room, and I come home to a cell phone bill that is ridiculous. And all of this because I did not keep my expectations in reality. I knew his personality before I told him my story. That's my reality. My expectation was that he'd be excited and have some animated response to my story. Expectations and reality. And I think we do that on a regular basis in life. If we keep those two so far away from one another, then this is where all of our emotion lies. But if we keep our expectations in line with our reality, we are not that we will not have a feeling about it, but we are less likely to have an emotion that is limiting or upsetting or overwhelming. And I hope that makes sense. So the ending part of this coping presentation is that obviously we have to have some detaching techniques as self-care advocates and as we take care of ourselves in the line of work that we do. Here it says, when a client is describing the sometimes traumatic details of their life, it's very easy to imagine yourself in the same scenario. And so you experience the trauma yourself. So this first technique is called the balcony effect. Now, obviously, it probably takes practice to get to this place. But with the balcony effect, you imagine yourself on the balcony above the office setting, and you watch the client tell the story so that you never fully engage in the story by putting yourself in the client's shoes. Now, this goes back to where we were talking about empathy in the beginning. This doesn't lack empathy. You're still very involved. You still hear every detail of the story, but you don't put yourself in the client's shoes. You don't imagine you're there. You don't experience the trauma yourself. You see it from a different position, which is very much also like this second detaching technique. It's the movie theater effect. And this involves imagining yourself watching the movie, playing it out as the client's telling the story, but not becoming a character in the movie yourself. This is why I told you guys sometimes it's difficult for me to watch certain movies. If it has anything to do with like racial injustice, if it has something to do with it being a single mom, if it has those certain things draw me in because I imagine myself as the character. So there are times where I have to also adopt a whole, this doesn't have anything to do with you, Tina. This is not you. You know, you're not a character, or I just choose not to watch that particular movie. But in our line of work, we have to imagine and hear our stories from our client's perspective, not as if we're the client ourselves. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions. Yes, I don't watch horror films either. I imagine myself, or I'm screaming at the screen, like do something, and it's really, you know, it's a character, and I imagine myself as the character. I also see that someone wrote about expectation and reality. Yeah, that, like I said, was 17 years ago that I attended that seminar, and it's still a very important message for me and for my clients, for my children. Expectation and reality really limits us having an explosive or overwhelming response to something if we keep those two in the same address. When they live very far away from each other, you have all this area for your emotions to take control. All right, so self-care plan of action. First of all, we say no. It's a complete sentence. I don't know, some of you, well, Tracy may know my mom. She's very active in my life. My mother also is the hostess, and my husband and I just opened a wine lounge, and she's the hostess, and everybody knows her to be a spitfire. She's very good with boundaries. My mother taught me a long time ago that no is a complete sentence. And I used to think she was a mean woman because my mother, I would hear her on the phone with her friends when I was growing up, and they might ask her to go somewhere and she'd just say no. And she'd get off the phone and I'd say, why didn't you say, like, because you were busy or, you know, anything else? And she said, because no is the sentence. It's the complete sentence. And if we learn to implement this in our vocabulary on a regular basis, that no is a complete sentence and it doesn't require no because I have to fold laundry, no because I have to pick the kids up that day, no. That extra part of the sentence is us taking care of other people's emotions and feelings. Now, there are some people that obviously, if we feel moved to do so, we provide an explanation. But no is a complete sentence all by itself. And it's a first step in taking care of yourself. If we're talking about self-care plans, it doesn't have anything to do with like filling up a cup or going to get a manicure or a pedicure. Or actually, the first thing is taking care of yourself by saying no to the things that you really mean no to, and not saying yes to things that you absolutely have zero time for. Before I go into the next screen, I'm going to make sure there's not anything. Yes, I will provide the wine lounge info as well. I love talking about the wine lounge. Let's watch this video on no, if it will play.
Cynthia, would you like to sign up for my niece's lollipop drive?
Sure.
Are you sure?
Sure. No, sure.
Okay, you said no twice that time, so...
What? Oh, sure, totally.
Okay. Alright, well, I'm just gonna give this to you, then.
Sure.
And if you could just, pass it on to the next person when you're done, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Hey, is it cool if Jerry comes to dinner tonight?
Sure. Hey, Cynthia, is it okay if I put this plant on your desk?
Sure. Cynthia, do you want to check out my GoFundMe page?
Sure.
Hey, can I borrow your earbuds?
Sure.
Thanks.
Cynthia, do you want to come to my improv show tonight? It's mainly audience participation.
Sure. Here.
Thank you. Hey, Siobhan.
Yeah.
Would you like to sign up for my niece's lollipop drive?
Oh, no thanks. These are a huge scam.
Okay, no problem.
Hi, I'm Cynthia from College Humor.
So I love that because, like I said, my mother tried to teach that to me for a very long time, and I thought just saying no was mean, or I had to make sure that I was covering my no with an excuse that would make sure so that people would feel good about my no.